Brother Trucker, Andy Fleming, thank you for kicking off this program. Today here on the Fallon Forum, we're broadcasting, as always, from downtown Des Moines in the Skywalk. I say as always, but that's going to change. We are going to be broadcasting once next month from the Ragbri campsite here in Des Moines. And also, if everything goes well, we will be broadcasting a couple programs from Chicago. We'll see how that works. You know, I really like to throw my producer, Maddie Arrington, soon to be Maddie Kane, curveballs. I think it makes her life more interesting, spices it up a bit for her. You know, she has a habit of falling asleep at the board while she's doing the program. So that sort of thing, make sure she stays wide awake, even if it might take an extra cup of coffee on some days. All right, I'm teasing her. She's smiling. She's not throwing anything at me, though. And fortunately, even if she did it would just smack against the window in between our studios. Hey, Jeffrey Weiss is going to join us on the show today to talk about the conflict in Syria. This is not an issue we have yet tackled. It's one that is of great importance in the foreign policy lay of the land. We're also going to talk with the Democratic candidate for governor, Bob Kraus. Bob Kraus finally somehow convincing the Des Moines Register that he actually exists. So want to congratulate him on that huge accomplishment and hear more about why he wants to be governor and how the campaign itself is shaping up. We've got to talk a little bit about Obama's speech yesterday. That was some parts were unexpected. Some parts were predictable. The response was, I guess, predictable. This is going to kill the economy. This is going to hurt jobs. We can't do this. That's the usual tired rhetoric that we have heard for years, not just on climate change, but on spotted owls, for example. The argument that, you can't save the spotted owl in the forests of the Northwest or you'll kill the logging industry. Well, let me think about this for a second. Oh, if you cut down all the trees, then maybe the spotted owls not only are gone, but you no longer have a lumbering industry. Over time we figure out that, good stewardship of the earth, responsible and sustainable approach to how you do business is not just good for the environment and society, but it's also good for your business. So maybe folks will figure this out when it comes to climate change. But in the meantime, we're going to be hearing a lot of that anti-renewable fuel rhetoric, a lot of rhetoric opposed to some of the key things that President Obama proposed yesterday. And again, I was actually expecting a little bit less, so I guess I'm okay. I would have liked to have seen a lot more, given the intensity of this crisis. But the fact that we got what we got, we should feel good about that. This is probably one of the more important and progressive speeches we've heard from Obama, and certainly from any president in recent memory. Okay, so again, to kind of recapitulate what happened. And again, folks, if you want to call into this program, you're always welcome to do that. It's 244-0077, 244-0077. And again, not only is it great for you to call into the show, but it's also really important to support the businesses that make this show possible. And not just businesses, but organizations as well. Of course, that we have three great nonprofits that help sponsor this program. The Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action. Two of those are membership groups. In the case of the Climate March, all you got to do is strap on some shoes and say you want to walk across the country. That's all there is to it. I also want to thank my business partners. Gateway Marketing Cafe is my anchor supporter, and they are the sponsor of this segment of our show. I want to thank Tinker Heating and Cooling. Yeah, with emphasis now on cooling, you might want to think about getting your AC unit looked at. I want to thank Hawk Restaurant, a fantastic place in the East Village, serving 90% of the food coming from local farms. And also, again, it's not just about organizations and businesses, but about events like the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit coming up in November. Okay, so on to the climate change issue, the speech that the president gave. I mean, it looks at numerous new and expanded policies. And these are all policies that the president could implement without any congressional action. And that's important because you're not going to get any congressional action. You might see something in the U.S. Senate. And we have seen both Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate coming together on the gun issue to some extent, on the immigration issue to a greater extent. We're starting to see a shift in GOP philosophy when it comes to marriage equality, when it comes to full equality for gays and lesbians. We're still a ways, I think, from seeing any kind of progress on the climate change front. But I'm less worried about the U.S. Senate than I am about the U.S. House. I mean, that place is an embarrassment on so many fronts. It embarrassed itself last week by tanking the Farm Bill due to a massive cut to the food stamp program, the food assistance program, the SNAP, I guess, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Food stamps was so much easier. But it's a dysfunctional body with a Neanderthal look at the problems we face. And so, Obama did well to figure out a strategy that does not require congressional action. So tip of the hat to you on that one, Mr. President. And again, he said he would do that, and he's doing that, and I'm happy about that. That's good news. Okay, the most significant component of what the president proposed is that he demanded that the U.S. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, enact limits on carbon emissions from not just new power plants that are coming into the pipeline, existing power plants, not just coal, but all power plants must meet these new emissions requirements. And I was thinking, okay, what's he going to say by 2025? Maybe optimistically 2020? No, by June of 2015. That is 2 years away. That's progress. And that's not just progress, it's progressive. It's encouraging. I mean, that's good. It also does present a challenge to industry. And you know what? Industry needs to be challenged because we are hurting in a big way. And this tight timeline gives them a chance to move forward quickly. And remember, put this crisis in the compare it with World War II, when we finally figured out that we needed to move quickly to stop Hitler. And actually, it was in response, of course, to Pearl Harbor. We retooled this economy in about 6 months. If we want to do this, we can. This is a huge undertaking, no doubt about it. There are going to be plenty of sacrifices to be made, both on the part of business and on the part of the rest of us. But it has to be done. And the fact that the president is identifying an aggressive timeline, good. I'm glad to see that. Okay, so what else? Beyond that, this song I can't talk about it all, obviously, but beyond that, the incentives for developing new energy technologies. That is very encouraging. And again, I don't quite know how this plays out. The president's proposal will open more public lands for energy production. Now, normally when you hear opening public lands for energy production, you think of turning over the public resources to oil companies and others, drilling, mining, coal as well. But this is for renewable sources like wind and solar. I don't know the engineering side of this well enough, but maybe you need big tracts of public land for solar and wind farms. Again, I would like to see, as we've begun to see here in Iowa, well, certainly actually it's doing better in other states like Minnesota, decentralizing the production of wind, decentralizing the production of solar would be ideal. So my concern is that by focusing on public lands, we're looking at large-scale operations. And again, I'm okay with some large-scale operations if it means moving us off of coal, oil, and natural gas. Speaking of natural gas, that is one thing that concerns me about the speech. Again, natural gas continues to be referred to as the transition fuel because, to the observer, natural gas seems to be fairly emissions-free, but the truth is it is pumping out a heck of a lot of methane. And a big part of the problem with natural gas is the extraction of it from the earth is extremely hazardous, very damaging to the environment. And in the case of Northeast Iowa, where we don't have natural gas itself being mined, what we have going on in Northeast Iowa, of course, is the extraction of sand to use in the fracking process, the hydraulic fracking process. And that sand extraction is causing major headaches for farmers and for the tourism industry. So, it's a big problem. I'm sorry to see that people continue to refer to natural gas as a transition fuel. We ought to put it in the same category as coal and oil, or as my friend Senator Sky Damon calls it, the con fuels, C-O-N, coal, oil, and natural gas / nuclear. Anyway, the con fuels, the fuels we want to move away from. Now, the argument is made, of course, that coal-fired power plants are needed because they generate, they're consistent. They're always able to operate. They generate what's called baseload power, and that wind turbines don't always run because of wind. Solar panels don't always work because of the lack of sun. There it's a storage issue. But the truth is, any power generator is going to go offline sometimes for a long, long time. Look at the nuclear power plant in Fort Calhoun along the Missouri River. That's still offline 2 years after the flood that happened there. There are plenty of coal plants that are offline for a long period of time because of emissions problems, because of other structural issues. So to say that coal is the way to go for assuring a consistent base load, that's not true. It really doesn't add up to the evidence we're seeing. So, and again, if we can get to the point where we are effectively storing and transmitting power generated through wind and the sun, we'll solve that problem in a big way. Now, again, we'll see where all this goes. It is encouraging. I will say, every day, and we have another new feature on this program, by the way. On Fridays, we're going to have the Climate Beat. And this is something, though, that cannot wait till Friday. This is an AP story yesterday regarding the jet stream. And yeah, we kind of know in Iowa that it's been a very odd spring, early summer. Lots of rain, some places much worse than others. And apparently, if you look at the people who study this, the scientists, the climatologists who look at this closely, say the jet stream isn't playing by the rules. I like that comment, is not playing by the rules. Well, the truth is, the rules have changed. We are in a new climate era, and this era has established a whole new dynamic. And unfortunately, we don't even know what the rules are yet. And we can't know what the rules are because it's a new phenomenon. We do not know where this is going. And that's why we need to be acting as quickly as possible to minimize any additional impact on the climate, and also to prepare for the inevitable changes. We talked earlier in this week about the Iowa's slow response to changing how it manages growth in floodplains, other things it can be doing to prepare for and mitigate flood damage, which is inevitable anymore. It's an annual event. I mean, last year was an exception, but flooding anymore is pretty much an annual event, okay? Now, last week, this jet stream was responsible for downpours that led to historic floods in Alberta, Canada, as well as record-breaking heat in parts of Alaska. Now, apparently, I'm more familiar with the jet stream in terms of what it does out in the ocean. I'm always keeping an eye on that. But the jet stream across the land usually rushes rapidly from west to east at pretty much a straight line, apparently. But over the past 3 years or so, it has been wobbly. It has been weaving. I love the story, and this says, quote, like a drunken driver. Okay, so it's kind of erratic. And as it acts erratically, it wreaks all sorts of havoc on our weather, on our communities, and you see these extreme events that we've not noticed in the past to this extent. And again, extremes in both directions, mostly in the direction of more wet, more floods, more storms, more tornadoes. But then you had, of course, the winter of 2011, 2012, which again seemed to be non-existent. There was very little snow, record warmth in March. Do you remember March last year? What a month that was. We had lilacs blooming in Des Moines at the tail end of March. This year, second week of May, which is again more normal for lilacs, but the other stuff that's happening is not so normal. Okay, there was one 12-month period recently where we had a record number of tornadoes in the U.S. That was followed by 12 months that set a record for the lack of tornadoes. Now, Jeff Masters, he's a meteorology director at the Weather Underground. Nothing to do with the folks who blew up buildings back in the 60s, just so you know. I'm surprised they actually picked that name. He says, quote, I've been doing meteorology for 30 years, and the jet stream the last 3 years has done stuff I've never seen before. Folks, again, President Obama, tip of the hat, Mr. President, a decent start to addressing a huge crisis that should have been talked about the way you talked about it yesterday, that we should have had that conversation 10, 20 years ago. We're having it, though. It's good. It needs to be stronger. Get off the natural gas thing, and please, whatever you do, do not approve Keystone Pipeline. My impression has been for the last several months that he's not going to do that. We'll see. We'll know soon. We're going to shift gears, when we come back, folks. We're going to talk with Jeffrey Weiss with the Catholic Peace Ministry about the conflict in Syria. I want to again thank Gateway Market and Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Check them out, folks. They're a local grocery store at 20th and Woodland. Also open for breakfast, lunch, and supper, and a fantastic catering service. And, of course, Diana's Wedding Cakes in Newton. If anybody's getting married, they need to get a wedding cake at Diana's, okay? It's part of your job description, Maddie. Also, S&P Piano. I want to thank S&P for hauling my piano practically all over the globe, it seems. And I want to thank Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering. Had a fantastic salmon dinner for a very affordable price there this week. And now also, of course, providing the weather is cooperating, a great patio, outdoor patio seating with a view of Beaverdale and patio on the street level as well. Cool. Check them out, folks. That's Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering. I'll be back in just a minute with Jeffrey Weiss.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 101 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait.
Howdy.
And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. I want to thank Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling for sponsoring this segment of our show. I want to thank Mr. Baber's Neighbors for their tune Ode to Jones to kick off the conversation here. And a quick shout out to some of my other business partners. Sargent's Garage. You got a vehicle that needs repair, check out Sargent's Garage at 6th and College. They have worked on 4 generations of my mobiles, and the most recent one going on 237,000 miles. Of course, I don't drive it all that often anymore. In fact, it sat so long behind my house the other day that by the time I got around to driving it after about a month, a 4-inch tall maple tree was growing out of the windshield. That was so awesome. I should have got pictures of that, but no. I drove away, and at 50 miles an hour, it gave up the ghost. I also want to thank Dan Kelly with his real estate business in Newton. If you've got property you want to buy or sell in Newton, give Dan Kelly a shout. And Ritual Cafe, one of my favorite businesses, located right here in downtown Des Moines at 13th and Locust. Information about all my partners, organizational, business, and event partners are all on the Fallon Forum website. So check that out, folks, and do support the people who are willing to take a risk on backing a guy like me, totally trashing their reputation and any credibility they have in order to support the promotion of issues that don't get discussed on AM or FM radio. Hey, Jeffrey Weiss is in the studio with me. Jeffrey is with the Catholic Peace Ministry. We are a contrasted attire today with me, all sorts of dapper here. Mr. Jeffrey wearing sporting an attractive yellow tank top.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. I'm feeling really good.
And of course, you've got the classic Jeffrey Weiss attire
right.
is the sunglasses on the head.
You got to be relaxed. Life is short.
I mean, well, you do relax very well, in spite of dealing with some pretty challenging issues. I mean, you've got to.
I heard you talking about climate change, and one of the underreported stories in the Western media is the effect of global warming on drought in Southwest Asia. And there are a lot of social scientists who have tracked the drought in Syria in particular, and what that did to the agricultural harvest from 2004 to 2010.
How bad was that?
It forced a lot of people in middle-class people and also farmers from rural areas in the long strip west of the country where most of the population is into the cities. And then coupled with Bashar Assad's privatization and what some people call crony capitalism, where he turned over a lot of the public industries to his first cousin and other friends of his. This was a lot of the spark to the Syrian uprising. Both global climate change, corruption, crony capitalism, the Syrians tired of being ruled by the same family since 1970.
Really? We've only been ruled by Bushes and Clintons since the 1970s. Well, maybe 80s, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, two wings of the same party, right?
Well, I'm kidding, actually. It's not the same at all. But
yeah, pretty close.
You always have to be on guard against dynasties.
And really, and I would just say, in terms of talking about Syria, climate change has caused a lot of disruption. Now, of course, as many of you know, 90,000 people are dead over the last 2.5 years.
90,000?
Yes.
I did not realize it was that bad.
This is a civil war.
So that's close to the number killed in Iraq during our conflict there.
Possibly, and you also look at 5.5 million people displaced in a population of close to 20 million.
Displaced to where?
4.5 million displaced within the country, and the other refugees in bordering countries.
So they're in refugee camps?
Refugee camps.
Which are hotbeds for disease and all manner of suffering.
Well, the United Nations High Commissioner of Refugees has been very busy. Countries like Turkey, for example. And really, this would be part of my message today to United States citizens who can hear me, is the proper role that the United States can play in this conflict is humanitarian. It is real strong on the humanitarian level, and also working with the Russian Federation to bring the sides together.
And you mean the U.S. as a nation should be focused on humanitarian aid, or do you suggest too that individuals can help out somehow with their contributions?
That's an excellent question, and
I specialize in excellent questions.
Well, I would say both.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
I would say both, because there are a number of non-governmental organizations, Doctors Without Borders, for example, that are in Syria. However, because the violence is so profound and the country is so fractured, Syria is also a dangerous place for humanitarian workers and journalists. It hasn't taken on the same flavor as Iraq in regards to journalists and humanitarian workers. However, the numbers, you read them, are quite staggering of what's taking place in Syria.
Wow. So, You mentioned how the U.S. and Russia are cooperating on this. I was not aware of that. I thought there was some tension over our
there definitely
takes
is.
On the problem.
The Russian Federation is supporting Bashar al-Assad diplomatically and with weaponry, as they have historically. The United States is now starting to provide small arms and some intelligence to the opposition. The problem is, what is the opposition? Is the 80% of the population,
right,
perhaps broken up into maybe 900 different groups? The opposition is so divided. You asked about the United States and Russia. The problem a couple of months ago, Russia and the United States did cooperate to try to bring Assad's government and the opposition together in Geneva for talks on power sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, the Assad government was willing to go through with those talks. It was the opposition that, in fact, backed down.
Interesting.
And
Yeah,
part
some of
the-
these conflicts you can never quite identify where the roadblock is going to be.
Well, and the reality is, and this has been reported correctly in our media, is the government of Syria is now really sort of clearing out a lot of the resistance in the cities, and they are achieving the military upper hand. And oftentimes the party that feels like it has the power and is continuing to win military victories is the one that wants to go to the negotiating table because they will be negotiating from strength.
Folks, if you want to join the conversation, as always, you're welcome to call 244-0077, 244-0077. Toll-free number, it's 855-244-0077, because what talk show host worth his weight in feathers does not have a toll-free number to call? If you want to save your firepower for Bob Kraus and ask him the tough questions about his campaign for governor, he'll be joining me later in the program. But I would not shy away from throwing tough questions at Jeffrey as well, or commenting on his yellow tank top. I do want to ask a couple of questions, Jeffrey.
Sure.
You mentioned the drought in Syria, which, again, some climatologists, some scientists are connecting to the whole global shift in climate because of what we've been doing up above. Is this an example of maybe this is a loaded question too, but it seems like we should be expecting more conflicts based on climate-related problems as food and water in some cases become scarce, in some cases become problematic in the other direction. I mean, Bangladesh. What happens to Bangladesh when all the poor folks living in the easily flooded area there along the mouth of the Ganges?
Right.
What happens when that gets inundated? What happens in the Seychelles and other small low-lying countries? What happens when the dam finally breaks in Holland?
Right.
I mean, there are so many issues.
Yeah, and there's so many books on this, related to resource wars and climate change, the battle for water in that part of the region. At the same time, the world is more peaceful. There's a lot less war in the world than there was 10 years ago, 20
you
years
said
ago,
that.
30 years ago. Political violence is on a dramatic decline. And actually military spending, with the exception, of course, the United States, both in military spending and war. Most of the rest of the world is moving in a different direction than the United States is in regards to, permanent war economy, state of perpetual war. But having said that, Syria is a grand exception, and it is an example of, also Darfur, some have pointed that, of how climate is affecting things. And there's a lot more coming down the pike, of course, with China's consumption of carbon and other things.
And India as well.
Oh, yeah. And, I heard you talking about climate disruption. I mean, the climate affects the fate of Homo sapiens. I mean, we have been around 200,000 years based on brain capacity. There's no guarantee that we will necessarily be around another 200,000 years. And so it is possible that what we're doing to the climate will make our species go extinct.
And I think
time.
that would
probably
be sad.
an important pro-life issue, I would think.
Well, yeah, that would be
being
very...
a Catholic, the extinction of the species is,
it'd
might be of some interest.
Yeah, it would be tragic on a number of levels. Could you imagine planet Earth without baseball?
Well,
I mean, come on.
Well, in whatever is
baseball,
able to
Bach, or Beethoven. Those
whatever
are the three
is
things
able
that I
to
would
evolve and adapt may create their own baseball. Who knows? I don't know, but it probably won't be us.
Yeah, but they won't remember Mickey
At least
Mantle.
the Dodgers won't continue to lose. But,
Yeah, we jest, but it is a very serious topic. Let me ask you one more thing relevant to Syria.
Sure.
Then I have one more question
Yeah.
for you on a related issue. You mentioned that Russia and the U.S. seem to be mostly cooperating on trying to address the Syrian crisis. Is that
and yet at odds in terms
Sure,
of
yeah. And is the tension, is there going to be tension now between the two countries with what's going on with fugitive Edward Snowden, who is apparently somewhere at the Moscow airport, or who knows exactly where he is, but on his way from Hong Kong to probably Cuba or Venezuela via Moscow, and Premier Putin being pretty clear about his unwillingness to cooperate with the U.S. government's request for extradition. Yeah. Is that going to create any conflict, tension that's going to affect the Syrian crisis?
No. I mean, it is tension. It is some conflict. But, the hold that the Russian Federation has on the European Union in regards to oil and energy is strong enough really to keep the United States and the Russian Federation talking to one another. Because
I'm sorry, that's the reason.
Well, it really is. And so, neither country can afford to be enemies. When people talk about, a Cold War kind of conflict, no, we're not talking about that. Now, at the same time, what we have to say, the Russian Federation is supporting the government of Syria, and the United States is starting to support some opposition. The problem is Syria is now so fractured that whatever side wins, elements of that side have made statements to the effect that they will exterminate the other side. And when people start using words like that, it can get kind of scary. So
now, I don't know if there was any drone use in Syria, but I know the drone issue has come under increased scrutiny lately. In fact, we had just a very impressive march from the Quad Cities to Des Moines just this month, calling attention to the use of drones and the problems, the inhumanity of the use of drones on civilian populations around the world, including potentially our own. And you were part of that march.
Yeah, I only walked about 22 miles.
You slept only 22 miles. What's wrong with you?
For a day and a half, but others walked.
Did you wear that yellow tank top?
No, I did. It actually would have been good for the traffic, but now that I'm thinking about it,
it's like a safety vest.
Well, Aaron Jorgensen Briggs of Catholic Peace Ministry walked all 200 miles, which is very impressive.
Really?
But no, we got good media along the way.
Wow.
We received, in report, a lot of nice comments from all political parties. The Republicans appear to be ahead of the Democrats on this issue in some extent.
Really?
Opposing
that's fascinating, isn't
domestic drones and opposing weaponized drones
on civil liberty issues, on privacy issues, on government overreach issues.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. And there are a lot of Democrats who are unwilling to criticize the administration. Now, we did a couple of weeks ago read a story in the New York Times saying that most recently, kind of breaking news, drone bombings in Southwest Asia are starting to decrease that the United States is using.
Maybe you've had an effect.
Yeah, we think that is the effect of both some of the Republicans in the Senate, others, in the United States who agree. What I continue to tell people is that if we are willing to kill civilians in other countries, and it's not a big deal for us, then I don't think we should be really, really surprised when people try to kill our civilians, because, it's somewhat logical.
Yeah.
And so this is a new form of warfare. War, generally you have skin in the game, so to speak. But when you have robots that are killing people, it's not always good PR. And oftentimes people who are killed want to take revenge. And violence begets violence.
Yeah.
We need a world of nonviolence. This is the message of Jesus of Nazareth, which I know nobody's ever heard of.
Don't start that. Now Frank's going to call in.
But nonviolence, I often say that now when I say Jesus. I say, I know people haven't really heard or read much about this Jesus and his nonviolence, but it is there. It's weird to say that in a Christian nation, or a so-called Christian nation, whatever it is. Anyhow, off of that.
Yeah, we need to talk more about the drone issue too. This is a critical issue on the national front, on the domestic front as well as the international front. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for thank you for walking. Tell Aaron I'm in all the people who are able to walk the full distance. We could use your legs on the Great March for Climate Action next year, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So keep those shoes.
Maybe the gold tank would
Jeffrey
be
Weiss, folks, with the Catholic Peace Ministry, and despite my efforts to upstage him with my fancy attire, I think he scored the best dressed member of the set today with just a yellow tank top.
Yeah, but you haven't
glasses on his head.
You haven't looked at Bob's attire yet.
Well, we're gonna look at Bob's attire. But more important than what the heck Bob wears is what the heck Bob thinks, because he's running for governor. Maybe he could run for governor. With
a gold tank top.
I was going to suggest more like a good pair of walking shoes. The gold tank top, I think, probably wouldn't work. Maybe in some neighborhoods, I don't know. But Bob, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, we'll talk with you about your campaign for governor. Been there, done that. Mm-hmm. Interested in seeing how it's going for you.
Look forward to it.
All right, folks, we're going to take a short break here. Again, I want to thank Tinker Heating and Cooling for sponsoring this segment of our show and encourage you to support Leonard Tinker. He's been doing this for 30 plus years. And again, you got an AC unit that needs looking at, give him a shout. I also want to thank the Fighting Burrito with restaurants in Ames and Des Moines. In Des Moines, Fighting Burrito is open 7 days a week. Good stuff. And a very, very affordable burrito that is custom made to your choice. Again, Story County Veterinary Clinic with Dr. Kim Holding on Highway 30 between Ames and Nevada. Check her out for help with your critters. And also Ritual Cafe. Again, thanks to Ritual for being a sponsor of this program. I'll be back in just a minute with Bob Kraus joining us on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
The dawn of a new era begins.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. That's Max Wellman bringing us back to our conversation here on the Fallon Forum. I want to thank the $1 Million Marathon for sponsoring this segment of our show. And real quick here, big election yesterday in Massachusetts. The Democrats held on to John Kerry's seat. I guess really not a surprise. What surprised me actually was it was as close as it was, 9%. In Massachusetts, you might think that a longtime U.S. Congressman, Ed Markey, could have pulled off a bigger margin to victory. But again, he ran a real tough, aggressive campaign and won. His message is, maybe it's a classic message you might expect from a Democrat in Massachusetts. I have delivered, he says, a message on gun safety, on a woman's right to choose, on creating more jobs. And I think that message has been delivered, and I feel very good about today. Well, congratulations to Ed Markey. By the way, just for the record, went to the same school as the guy. He graduated a little bit before me, actually quite a bit before me. So, all right, we're going to switch gears here and talk with Bob Kraus. Bob is running for the Democratic nomination for governor. I have been there and done that. Bob, get out. Don't do it. Bob, do not do this to yourself. You got to love yourself more than this, Bob.
Well, actually, if I did it for the joy and pleasure of being beat up, I guess that'd be okay because I'm in it for the issues. I think that there's a lot of important issues that we have in this state that need full discussion, and a Democratic primary is a wonderful forum to do it. I think we need to talk about a variety of things, including education, climate. We need to talk about soil conservation, clean water. We need to talk about rural economic development. We need to talk about incomes policies. There's a variety of just real strong issues that are out there that Iowa needs to move on in the next 10 years.
Well, and let's talk about the issues because that really is what it's all about. But it's also about politics, about campaigns, and let's talk about that first. Right. You're one of three candidates who, as of now, are running. Well, I think there are two who have officially announced, correct?
Well, that's a good question.
Even you're not sure.
Yeah, well, Jack is kind of sort of.
Jack Hatch, state senator from Des Moines.
And then there was actually a gentleman, I think, from Warren County, I saw in the John Deeth column about him. Tyler Olson is still a maybe.
Tyler Olson is the state rep from Cedar Rapids, and also recently retired after only 6 months as the head of the Iowa Democratic Party. And that's a good indication that he's planning to run, because you don't become the head of the party, and only, especially with his youth and energy, you think he'd be doing that for at least a couple of years. But no, he's out. I'd say he's probably going to run.
I think that's a good guess, but he has not announced yet. I don't think he's announced the formation of any exploratory committee or anything like that. He has appeared in a number of events, previously as state party chair, as you say, and then shortly after he resigned, he was with me at the immigration march we had up by the Capitol I think it was about a week or two ago.
Yeah. So, right now it's a field of 3 that we know of, probably, maybe 4. My guess is it might get bigger before it gets smaller. When I ran for governor, there were, I think at one point, there were 8 or 9 candidates. It shrunk to 4, 3 that got any kind of traction. And then, of course, Sal Muhammad, who got 1%. But
well, Mike Gronstall said he'd make some kind of a decision this summer.
Sure. He was one of the 8 or 9 back in 2006.
Right. And then, of course, Tom Vilsack has taken himself out of the race.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Christy Vilsack has also taken herself out of the race.
That also makes sense.
There are probably a couple of wild cards out there that we don't know about. I think a lot of people are watching Branstad. Obviously, if Branstad, for health reasons or for other reasons, got out, perhaps next January or February, there would be a surge, and the ticket would be full.
My theory is Branstad is sitting on this for as long as possible to give his lieutenant governor, Kim Reynolds, a chance to jump in and be the lone candidate. He's trying to handpick her as his successor. So to do that, he makes it difficult for anyone else to jump in by announcing that he's not going to run late in the game.
Well, it's clear that he is vulnerable in the polls. That
would be a first. Well, maybe he's been vulnerable in the polls before, but he's always won pretty handily. His toughest election for governor was in the primary against Fred Grandy back in 1990.
Yeah, and that was a trigger for him to get out the last time.
No, I'm not sure about that. 'Cause he ran another time after that. He ran again in 94.
In 94, okay.
Yeah. It was 1990 was the Fred Grandy campaign.
Okay.
And Grandy came closer than anyone else, and partly because there were Democrats and independents who went to the Republican primary because they couldn't stand Branstad.
Yeah. Well, there was a recent poll, not at the Des Moines Register poll, but another poll that indicated that although he was nominally liked by the entire electorate, that there were many people that felt he had served too long. And I think that is probably his Achilles heel. And a number of people saw that poll. I'm sure his staff has seen it. And it would make sense. He has Kim Reynolds at every event, literally. And it does make sense that he's trying to build her up as much as he can.
Yeah, and then he came to be governor from being lieutenant governor. So
yeah,
let me ask you. I mean, I was used to this as well. I was ignored by the press for a while, and when eventually got that to change, did pretty well in the polls on election day. But you have that problem as well, which is interesting to me because of the 3 candidates likely to run on the Democratic side, you, State Senator Jack Hatch, and Tyler Olson, you're the only one who's actually run for statewide office. And I know you didn't do particularly well, but my take on that is you were running against a Democratic icon with tons of money, and the behind her was this momentum that Iowa needs to elect a woman to higher office. So that was tough.
It was.
I don't think anybody would have done much better than you had. So it's interesting to me that even though you're the only one who's actually run for statewide office, they're like relegating you to non-candidate status. And then look at the U.S. Senate race. Okay, on the Republican side, we've got 3, now maybe 4 candidates, none of whom anybody's even heard of, let alone any. I mean, I don't think any of them have ever run before, let alone run statewide. You're the only one in this field, Democrat or Republican, except for incumbents, who has run statewide. So it's just remarkable to me that the Register and other media outlets relegate you to the sidelines. I'm fascinated by that phenomenon.
Well, I think it might go back to the Conlon Krause campaign because I was marginalized then. I remember going to events in Madison County, and both Roxanne and I spoke there. We spoke not more than a speaker apart. The Register came. The Register focused on Roxanne's speech. I got up, they left. And it happened time and time again. So there is a pattern of marginalization that was established.
It's not new for you.
No. But the one thing that makes me a sleeper in this race is that I have been out there. And as you know, Ed, that's a powerful thing. Yeah. I campaigned around the state. I had an aggressive campaign, and although I did get outspent 40 to 1.
Yeah, that's hard. Those are hard odds to overcome.
That's tough numbers. I think it was probably competitive until the media blitz occurred, and obviously I couldn't beat that. But we did some very creative things to stretch a very small budget, and it made us a very issue-oriented campaign, and more so than any of my opponents. We had a website that we'd put a variety of issues on, from soup to nuts. The others, on with the exception of a few issues, talked in generalities.
Yeah. Now, again, the Register has recently seemed to change its tune and wrote an article about you. Mm-hmm. Nothing like the coverage they give to Hatch or Tyler Olson, mm-hmm. but it's something. And do you see that direction changing for you, that maybe they will start taking you seriously?
I think they were a little embarrassed.
Okay.
What had occurred is I sent a letter to the Register, and I sent it to every daily and weekly in the state. And some of it was just the fact that I was being ignored. Mm-hmm. And I asked when they did the poll of Hatch versus Branstad that they put a footnote in the article that the Register chose not to poll on my race, just to give me a line.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And they again, I can relate to it. They did that to me as well. Mm-hmm. And eventually you overcome that by building such a strong grassroots presence that they have to take you seriously.
Yeah, and I think that is what is happening. They were embarrassed because of all their peers realized it, and I think the most important statement was with when Kathy Obradovich appeared on the David Price show.
Right.
And Dave asked her, well, what about Bob Krause? And she says, well, it's all about the money.
I know. She and I like Kathy, but that. Ouch, that was an embarrassing comment, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really was.
It's really all about the money? Well, let's just let Donald Trump do everything.
Yeah, and I think that was what caused a shift. The article got picked up in a number of places.
Yeah, good. Hey, we're going to shift gears when we come back, folks, and talk with candidate Bob Krause about the reasons why he's running. It's important to discuss the political side of it, because even the best candidate, even the person who might be best for the job, doesn't get to that job, if he or she doesn't go through the political process. We've talked about that. We'll shift gears and talk about why Bob is running and what he wants to accomplish. Again, I want to thank all of my business supporters. Tally's Restaurant, Bar, and Catering. Check them out in Beaverdale. Tally's, great place for a campaign event, Bob.
I will look at that.
Good. They've got a fantastic room, inside room, but also outdoor opportunities on the patio and on the street level. Community CPA is a great place for your tax and accounting needs. They're located at 3816 Ingersoll. That's Community CPA. Again, I want to thank Fighting Burrito in Des Moines and Ames, and also Gateway Market, one of my strongest supporters. That's the fantastic local grocery store and cafe located at 20th and Woodland in Des Moines. And again, for sponsoring this segment of our program, the $1 Million Marathon. This is underway, folks. Dr. Richard Deming from here in Des Moines ran the first leg of the marathon. 160 consecutive marathons across the country, seeking to raise $1 million for cancer research and programs to help families and victims of cancer. So again, a great event sponsored by Above and Beyond Cancer. There will be a big rally here in Des Moines on July 16th or 17th, or actually both July 16th and 17th. More about that as we move forward. I'll be back in just a minute with more conversation with Bob Krause.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Harry McAdams bringing us back to our conversation today on the Fallon Forum. I want to thank the Des Moines Metro Opera for sponsoring this segment of our show. Again, this is a fantastic season with three great performances: Electra, Romeo and Juliet, and Peter Grimes as well. We'll talk more about that. Had one of the promotional folks from the opera, Nick Rankowski, on this program last week. I do want to point out too, we're going to talk more about the Supreme Court. There's so much happening: the climate change speech, the weather events, the Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act, and also today decisions on two issues relevant to marriage equality. Whatever happens, there's going to be a bunch of rallies across the state this week, or tonight rather. Cedar Falls, Ames, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Mason City, Sioux City, and here in Des Moines, 6 p.m. at the West Terrace of the State Capitol building. So that'll be an interesting place to be at 6 p.m. It'll be affected, of course, in terms of what happens at the U.S. Supreme Court level. Hey, back to our conversation with Bob Kraus. Again, we've talked politics. Let's talk issues. Why are you running? What do you want to accomplish?
Well, what I'm running on, and it's something that I guess comes from retrospective looking at the different campaigns that I've been in over the years. I see a lot of candidates go out. They run on specific issues, but they don't have a vision of what they're going to do when they govern.
Ideally, you do both.
Ideally, you do both, yes.
Right.
But you have to have a matrix to put it in. And so my matrix is world-class Iowa in 10 years. And what I want to do is select a number of areas that Iowa, frankly, is weak in. And that could be incomes distribution and incomes policy. It can be economic development where we're weak. It could be education. It could be water quality and groundwater protection.
All these issues. All the above.
We look at where we're at, and then we set up a gradual plan with benchmarks, annual benchmarks, to raise ourselves from below average or average to the top 10% of the states within 10 years.
Okay.
And everything that I'm going to do as a governor will fit into this matrix.
So within that matrix, what are the top 3 issues you want to address?
I think the number one issue is incomes. And because it ties to everything else. This last session, Governor Branstad pushed education reform very hard. And he got the legislature to do some things that weren't so good. And then in Branstad's chronic fashion, he'll probably try to underfund them.
What were the problems in that?
Well, I think
piece from your point of view?
He set the stage for a wild goose chase. The evaluations, teacher evaluations and measurement, will get you some. But the big measure, some
results?
Improved education, but it's a quality of education, but it is ethereal and it's not very measurable.
So you're saying testing is not the way to go to determine the success, the achievement level of students?
There is the DOE put out a report in 2011. And in that report, it showed what happened between middle-class wealthy children that had middle-class wealthy parents and children that had poor parents. And their performance level between those two was 20 percentile. If we can address incomes for children, we can address nearly our entire problem. We can elevate
incomes for children.
Well, we're talking about incomes for parents.
Okay.
I was on the Waterloo School Board, and when I was on the Waterloo School Board, one of the things that became obvious is that education wasn't working like it was in the 70s. In the 70s, Waterloo was at the top of the heap. They had good academics, and it was a town that had it was a union town. The John Deere at the time. Was a large union plant. By the time that I was on the school board, it had shrunk from, I think it was about 15,000, 20,000 down to about 2,000 to 3,000 people that were union employees. And the other factories in that town went through the same thing. Incomes collapsed for the middle class as a consequence. And we reaped the consequences of that in our school.
And they weren't pretty. Yeah.
No, we had single parents that would string together 2 and 3 jobs at a time to try to make ends meet for their family. And they weren't there for the kid. They couldn't be.
I'm sorry we don't have more time, Bob. And again, we will have you back on this program, and we'll talk less about politics and more about issues next time. But what are the other 2 issues on the top of your list that fit into that overall matrix you propose?
Well, I think some of it's preservation. I think
you mean conservation, environmental
conservation,
issues?
environmental. We've got probably one of the biggest natural resources we have in Iowa is something nobody's ever heard of, and that's the Jordan Aquifer. It underlies most of the state, and it's where a big chunk of our industry and our cities get their water. And because of things that are going on, that water table is sunk as much as 250 feet in some places.
Right.
That's a big problem. Surface water here in Des Moines. We've gone over the nitrite level in that water, and that's what causes blue babies. Now we have techniques to mesh and mix and match that so that we don't have blue babies in our human population. But that's doing strange things to the wildlife and other.
And I'm sorry we're about out of time. Just real quick, your third issue.
The third issue would probably be infrastructure. I think we do have to have a strong infrastructure if we're going to attract people to this state. I'd say it's a tie between infrastructure and education. We have to use the education as a generator, and we have to use the infrastructure to help bring people.
All right. Well, Bob, before you leave the studio today, go talk with my producer, Maddie, and let's make sure we schedule you to come on in a month or so. Next time you're going to be campaigning in Des Moines, because I do want to dig into the issues a bit more with you. And I'm sorry we didn't have more time for that today. Time flies when you're having fun. And when you're with Bob Krause, you're always having fun.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Bob, great to see you. Great to have you on the program. And again, good luck.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ed. I really appreciate you having me here.
All right. Yeah. Folks, again, I want to thank all of my business supporters. Tinker Heating and Cooling. Good Democrat, by the way. You might want to talk with him, Bob. Hawk Restaurant at East 5th and Locust. It's a great, East 5th and Walnut, rather, in the East Village. A wonderful place for lunch, and 90% of what you eat will have come from local farms. Again, I want to thank Kim Holding, Dr. Kim Holding with Story County Veterinary Clinic. Check her out. Again, information about all these businesses, including Dan Kelly's real estate business, a Ritual Cafe, Tally's Restaurant. All these folks are listed on my website under the support, actually under the sponsors tab. And you can, find out more about them, and please support them. Thank them for making this show possible. Again, I want to thank the Des Moines Metro Opera for sponsoring this segment of our show, and strongly encourage you to support the arts. Yeah, we got the Arts Festival coming up this week. We've got 8035 next week. The Repertory Theater of Iowa just concluded a fantastic a run of Shakespeare on the Lawn. But do not forget the opera. We have a fantastic opera that's been going for 41 years. Check it out, folks. It's in Indianola. Well worth attending. If not all three, then at least one of the operas that they're performing this year. Again, thank you to Maddie Arrington, my producer. Thanks to Webcast One Live. We'll be back tomorrow with more conversation on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.